where there's a story in every bottle. And live again, Monday, 5:30. Wow. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yoo-hoo.
We're on a split screen, it looks like.
We're on a split. We'll fix that. Yeah, there we go. Hey, folks, welcome once again to Monday Night Live with the Hermits and Merike. She's joining. Oh, wait, I think we got Merike here, too. She's here. Let me see if we can get her in. There she is. Hi, Merike.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So if you're wondering, Merike is in, I don't know where you are. Where are you, Merike?
I am home in Laconia.
Home. All right, excellent. So Merike is in Laconia, and the three of us are here at Montezuma Winery with Phil, our old friend Phil. We haven't seen in a long time.
We haven't even said hello to. We've just been running around.
I know. We just drove 7 hours, ran into the tasting room, bombarded through the tasting room staff into the distillery, and started setting up equipment so that we could share and tell you the story, tell you Phil's story and Montezuma's story. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. If you remember a couple of years ago, some of you have probably been here or were probably here before, but we interviewed Phil before early during COVID, and so some of you may have had a chance to meet Phil in the past, and we may have some new folks here, but so we're out here in Syracuse, New York. Well, actually, we're not in Syracuse now, but we came out here to go to Syracuse to go to the Eastern Winery Expo. This is the largest wine conference basically east of California, I think, and it's been held every year since 2012, I believe, and the three of us have attended every year that it's been held since the early days, since 2012. I haven't missed a year except last year. Unfortunately, the event was canceled for a lot of reasons. Everybody missed that year, so we're here in this part of the world to go to that conference. And Ken will be speaking at the conference, and Phil will also be speaking at the conference, so looking forward to that. But we're a day early. The conference doesn't start till tomorrow. And on the way over, we thought, we ought to go see Phil and have a conversation with him about some of the new and exciting things that are going on at Montezuma. And I know your project, since we last talked to you, has expanded a little bit, and we're in a new building, which you're going to talk about, I'm sure, in a minute. Before I get into all of that, if you're joining us for the first time, just a reminder, we'd love it if you subscribe to our page. You can subscribe right below here, so there in YouTube, somewhere in there. And if you're on Facebook, there's a little bell. You can click that. And if you subscribe, you'll get notifications whenever we go live. We're probably going to go live a couple times from the show this week, so that'll be fun. And if you're joining us, also, we'd love it if you'd let us know that you're here. Put your name, say hello in the comment section. And if you have questions, please ask questions. And we'll try and do our best to get to those questions during the conversation. If we can't, we'll get to them after the show is over. And if you like what we're doing, please like the broadcast. Share it with your friends if you think your friends would care to be interested in learning about what we're talking about. And I think Merike must be having some crackers or something. I hear some crackling going on in the background.
Yes, I'm building myself a little mini charcuterie board. I've got some Fortuna's.
So, Merike, are you going to check in with us every once in a while with the comments on how this is going to go?
I would like to, but I don't know if there's a setting that you can change on your end, Bob. I can see the comments from all of our guests, but I cannot write any myself.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think there is. The broadcast was launched from here, so that's where it's going to be. So I'll do my best to work on it.
I'm tuned in via Facebook as well, so I just have my Facebook feed muted, and so I can actually reply in Facebook. If we have any YouTube comments, I won't be able to see those, but I think most of our guests join us from Facebook anyway, so I can reply there.
Okay, great. How's the sound coming through on our mic here? Because we don't have our sound system set up today. We're running a little bit old school.
I can hear you all pretty well, and though I guess mostly it's been you talking, but thus far it's sounding pretty good.
All right, great. All right, good. Well, let's get started here. So Phil, we met you for the first time, I think, when we just randomly came to Montezuma in 2012 or 13, sometime in the early days.
13, because 12 was in Lancaster and 13 was in Syracuse. So the first time
Probably, yeah.
in the Finger Lakes region.
Yeah.
And we were going to the conference, and we were also going out and interacting with different wineries and finding out about it. And, you know, came here and met you and walked around. And then we've been comparing notes and talking and
I think
interacting ever since.
I think we sort of did the same thing then. We just kind of walked in and say, "Is the winemaker here? We'd love to talk to him." Before we know it, we were wandering through the winery.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, and by the way, can we sample?
You came to the right part of the world for that, though, because I think you'd get about the same response just about anywhere you walked into.
Yeah.
We're kind of a really open community. We're very much of the mind that there's no competition around here. Like, we're just sharing secrets every day and just trying to make our stuff better and our neighbor's stuff better at the same time. We realize that we're in a saturated wine region. There's over a 50-mile radius here. So we have accepted that some visitors aren't going to get to see all of us. And if we can make sure that all of our neighbors have really great wines the same way that we do, it will look favorably upon the region if they visit them and not us. So there's incentive for us to openly exchange ideas and help each other solve problems.
Raise the bar across the whole
Exactly.
industry.
It's so smart. I mean, that is, if you want to make a distinctive region where people want to come back to, and they're talking about the quality of the wines that they get out of the Finger Lakes, this area, everybody should compare notes and help each other do better at what they're doing. Because like you said, they're not going to go to all the wineries. And so you want them to be blown away by all of them, anyone that they go to.
And we're not that far removed from a time where this industry was very much in jeopardy, right? Like the Finger Lakes wine industry started in earnest because we used to have a couple major winemaking plants down in the southern tier of the Finger Lakes. And when they sold to major corporations, all of those contracts for the grape growers were basically written off. So you had families who had been growing grapes for generations with acres and acres and acres of vineyards and nobody to sell to.
What year around is that?
This is like the 70s,
Okay.
right?
Was that Taylor? Who was
It was Taylor, yeah. Taylor, they sold to Coca-Cola and started trucking in juices from California. And it devastated.
That happened to
the-
Canepa too, New Hampshire.
local growers.
That's
Yeah.
what happened. They were trucking in juice, and he was fermenting in New Hampshire for
Hmm.
some reason. Very nice.
Yeah.
In Glasgow.
So what the state allowed is they allowed all of these grape growers a different type of license, a farm winery license, which would allow them to operate basically as a farm market. It removed a lot of the red tape around wine. And that's what this industry was born out of. And there's a lot of people who were here during that time working in the business and building the business that are still here. And they don't let us forget, right? This is the... Hey, can you leave that open just so we can get Wi-Fi? Thank you.
We're Wi-Fi challenged, among other things.
That's interesting. So that's not that long ago. And now you said there's 100 different wineries or so just within 50 miles
It's
of here.
probably closer to 200 at this point.
So before we get into too much history, I think our people out there are probably thirsty and interested in knowing what we're drinking. That's part of our tradition.
Oh, you're teasing
Yeah,
everyone?
Yeah.
there you go. Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then we should segue back into that. But this is a good segue, right? Because this is a Riesling. This is one of the, probably to me, what the best wine I've had in this region is a Riesling. I think it's the growing conditions, the soils, the terroir, that blah, 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 blah stuff.
And furthermore, Chuck, I think our Rieslings can stand up against anybody in the world. Like, it's not just that that's the best of what we do here. It's the best of what we do, and we're some of the best in the world at doing it. I think that's something that needs to be stated as we push our wines out onto the world stage.
Which is really amazing because some of the other well-regarded Riesling growers have been doing it for centuries.
Absolutely.
And they've been working through the nuances and finally tuning it in. And this region has decades of working with Riesling. So
Absolutely.
starting to have that expression and quality just paves the way for it to get better and better, which is great.
So tell us about this particular Riesling. This is a barrel sample, right?
Well, it's
Or
a
a
tank
sample.
sample, but
Tank
it came out of my new concrete amphora.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's cool. He's got a big egg.
So,
A big concrete egg.
So this is a wine that's a 2021 vintage. The 2021 vintage here was difficult. It was very wet, a lot of rock pressure. We had to pick Riesling before we wanted to in most cases, and it didn't come in sparkling clean. So there was that. But we got our brand new amphora, and we wanted to use it with Riesling because this is the Finger Lakes, and that's what we do. And the idea was we would take some from every vineyard we sourced Riesling from. So every vineyard that grew Riesling for us this year is in this sample.
And how many vineyards is that? About.
Off the top of my head, I think it's 5 or 6. And it was just whatever we could afford to steal and put in the tank. And we fermented it with a wild starter culture that we built at the beginning of the season. So there's a winemaker out on Long Island at Bedell Cellars. His name is Richard Olson Arbich, and he makes a big show of the wild starter culture that he makes every year. So I reached out and asked him to tell me how he did it. And he did it because this is New York and that's how we are. And he told me point blank that it's almost 90% witchcraft. He uses his wild starter every year for his whites and rosés. His red fermentations don't really need it. They'll take off on their own. But for whites and rosés, he thinks of things that he might want to see in those wines. So if he wants those wines to have floral elements, he goes out and picks wildflowers. If he wants them to have fruit elements, he'll pick beach plums and apples off of the island. If he wants them to have minerality, he'll pick up rocks and seashells off the beach.
Witchcraft.
And all of that, exactly. But all of that stuff has yeast stuff to
Of course.
So when he puts that into his little 15-gallon demijohn, he gets the biomass started. You know, you've done wild fermentations.
Sure.
The scariest time is when you're waiting for things to take off because you don't know what's going to take off.
What's going to happen?
But if you have the foresight to build the culture this way, you know what it's going to do before you ever pitch it.
So what did you collect for your biomass?
So
Bicycles, balloons, old airplane parts. No, that would be me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not a winemaker, I think.
Good.
So we have some staghorn sumac that grows behind the winery. Some of that. We had some asters, some goldenrod.
Oh, wow.
I picked some black oak bark and leaves from a property that the owners of the winery own down the road here. Some shale and gravel, and some wild cider pears. So
And put this in a demijohn?
I put it in a
Some
15-gallon flex tank.
Sugary water?
With
Or
no. So
just-
one of the earliest juices we brought in, I just stole some right off the top. And that's what Richard does too. If he has a block in the vineyard that's not producing enough to make an actual bottling of a wine, he uses those grapes to build his starter. Or if he takes drops at verasion, anything that's got a little bit
Got
of sugar
some juice
content.
and sugar. Yep.
So, and then throughout the season, you just treat it like a sourdough starter.
Yeah.
Take out of it and just put juice back.
Yeah.
So this is from
And at
our
that
wild
time,
culture.
as you're building your culture, you're getting to smell it, taste it, and if it goes left or way down the wrong path, you can ditch it and start over
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Or certainly not inoculate your big batch with it.
Right.
So this was harvested in 21
Mhm.
and it's in tank right now. When do you have a rough idea when you think you might find this in the bottle and the folks out there might be able to get their hands on it?
When it tastes like it's time. I'm waiting to see, because this is my first time working with concrete,
Sure.
and I've heard mixed reviews. Like I've heard some people say that you want it to go a year because you don't want the concrete to sit idle and empty.
Yep.
You want to just throw something right back behind it.
Yep.
But I've heard other people say that it gives you kind of a chalky imprint if you leave it too long. So I'm just tasting this all the time and trying to make a determination about what's happening week to week.
Good. So it may be sometime in the next year.
Probably.
Yeah. Excellent.
Probably.
And we didn't talk much about it. We're at Montezuma. Tell everybody where we're at. Where is Montezuma? Give a little geographical idea so anybody that wants to visit can find their way here.
Sure. So we're in Seneca Falls.
Yep.
Seneca Falls, if you know your American history, is the birthplace of women's suffrage in the U.S. That's right down the road. You can go hang out in the church where Frederick Douglass and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and everybody came to the first conference on women's rights. So we are named after a neighbor in the other direction, the Montezuma Wildlife Refuge, which is a major flyaway for migratory birds. If you're familiar with the story of how the bald eagle was brought back from the endangered species list, that happened right over here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this was where they did their hatchling program, where they were raising young bald eagle hatchlings, and now we've got like 6 or 7 breeding pairs that come back every year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really wild. You just see them flying down the road. If you're fishing in the canal, they'll steal your fish from you.
This is why going on the road with the show makes so much sense. Here we come out here to learn about wine, and I get to find this nice tidbit about bald eagles and the women's suffrage movement. That's really cool. That's excellent. So we're about, I'm guessing 25 minutes west of Syracuse?
It's closer to 45.
45, okay.
Yeah, it's about a 45-minute drive.
And like you said, there's what, 150, 200 other wineries within an hour of here if you want to drive around.
Yeah, I mean, there's stretches at the Finger Lakes where you can throw a rock in any direction in the winery.
So I want to go back now to, when we met you, you were sort of just getting your legs.
Yeah,
if I remember, you were the assistant winemaker at the time and growing in the industry, learning. What's your background? How did you get to be here and where you're at now?
Yeah, so I went to a school in Rochester, New York, RIT. I keep pointing. That's where we're sitting facing west, so I just point west.
So if you're behind the camera,
right over there, Rochester.
Yeah, so about an hour that way.
Yeah.
And I went to RIT for a really specialized program and got a few years deep before I decided that wasn't for me. I'd already invested a lot of time and money. But I had learned early on that there was a loophole that would allow me to drink underage in class if I took wine classes. So I started taking them at 18.
That's right. I forgot that. Story. Yeah.
And just kind of fell in love with wine and started making wine and beer in my college apartment and just got bit by the bug. And then I got a part-time job one summer at Casa Larga, which is a winery in Rochester, in one of the suburbs. And that's where it clicked for me that people get paid to do this. So when I got back to school that fall, I changed my major to figure out what could get me out of there with a degree the fastest. And that's what I did. And I've been working in wineries ever since.
And so Montezuma wasn't your first winery, or was it?
No. So I worked at Casa Larga part-time, and then I worked at a winery out in Skinny Atlas. It was my first job out of college. Skinny Atlas is like one of the easternmost outposts of the Finger Lakes. And that was not a good fit for anybody involved. And when that harvest ended, that's when I ended up here. I just kind of ran through the Finger Lakes, just handing out resumes the old school way. This was before LinkedIn was what it is now. So I printed out a stack of hard copy resumes and just drove around the Finger Lakes handing them to anyone who would take one. So that's how I ended up here.
And that was around what time, what year did you start here?
That was 2010.
2010. Okay. So I'm impressed because you've been doing this in earnest now for 12 years, a little more if you take some of your earlier jobs.
Sure.
But, from what I understand, every time I look up this part of the world or I go to Eastern Winery, you're one of the more well-known wine makers in this area. I mean, you do a lot of talks. You're well respected in the industry.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm impressed. It's in 12 years, you've really you've come a long way.
Well, I think part of that is being here, right? Like,
Sure.
I'm a big believer in the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing.
Yes.
And I think because of the nature of what we do here at Montezuma, our home brand, right? We have two other brands, Ridge and Fossenvue. But Montezuma was started by a family of beekeepers. So they started doing meads, branched into fruit wine, and then grape wine after, like shortly before I got here.
Yep.
So we're making wine all year long. We're not waiting
Sure.
for harvest. You get so many reps and so much experience with troubleshooting, you know, like vinifera wines shoot right through a filter, but you put cranberry through a filter and it's not going. So it's been an opportunity to learn on the fly and just really pack in as much experience as possible. That's kind of the magic of ending up here.
That's great.
And this is both a winery and a distillery. When did the distilling part happen? Or was that already here too when you showed
It was
up?
here when I showed up. Distilling they started the distillery back in 2007.
Okay.
And we just celebrated the 20th anniversary of Montezuma last year.
Oh.
So, yeah, they've been around for a while. We're just like constantly evolving and changing what we do.
What's
And-
your total production now out of this place? In like thousands of cases, sort of like a year?
Somewhere around
roughly?
30,000.
About 30,000. Okay.
And
Yeah.
I understand this building that we're in right now is the latest expansion. Is that right?
Yes, it's one of them. It's
One of them.
We have
One of
two. So this building was built, they started building this back at the end of 2019
Okay.
with the intention of moving our distillery out under its own roof.
Yep.
And then COVID happened in 2020, and this became where we did distance tastings. And now that restrictions are easing up, we're starting to make moves to bring everything out from the distillery. Like they've been building out, you can't see it, it's behind the camera, but they've been building out the distillery lab and things like that. Now we're moving in the direction of actually finishing that project now that we don't need this space to keep people safely distanced and tasting. It was advantageous to have it at the time because we could keep people
Make use of
inside
it, sure, it's great.
and have a place for them to still come and visit. But now that things are opening up, we're starting to move things in the direction of coming back out here to the distillery. And then we've got another building that we built that's going to be our bottling building. So we're going to move all of our bottling equipment out under its own roof.
On site here.
Yeah, it's actually,
Back through there, right?
yeah,
You
it's
said?
just,
Yeah.
it looks exactly like this building, but it's back there.
It's same size or about?
About the same
About the
size,
same
yeah. Yeah, so it's constantly evolving.
So you were assistant winemaker when you started, when we met you in 2013, and now you're making wine. You're the head winemaker at 3 wineries.
Yeah.
Making how many vintages a year?
Oh my goodness. I think we're up over 100 SKUs on the wine end.
Oh my God! See, Ken,
Oh, I know.
piece of cake.
Yeah. Say it's 10. It makes my life easier, you know, 'cause
100, Ken.
I know.
I thought
Phil,
we used to
that's
say
Phil.
35 was
That's
a lot.
Phil, and that's too many.
I mean, I can see the wall coming. I'm at the point
You
where
just
I
keep pushing the gas down though, man.
Yeah, but if I push the gas hard enough, I might break.
You might break through.
So you
through
must
the
have an
other side.
assistant winemaker by this time, or
So-
a couple maybe.
So right now I have a cellar assistant who is on track to be promoted to assistant winemaker. We had an assistant winemaker that left just before harvest last year,
Ugh.
late in the summer.
Great
then
timing, huh?
We tried to hire somebody else, but it just didn't work out. And the labor market's been difficult.
It's
to get
tough,
So we're hurting at every facet of the business. We can't get enough bodies. So yeah, we're just gonna have to make do with what we have for right now.
Now, some of the other things that I know have been affecting us, how is it here? Not only is it the labor market that's affected, trouble getting glass. I mean, 30,000 cases of glass is a lot of glass to find and get shipped here. Shipping has been a challenge. How is your industry here experienced some of those things.
Well, we're very lucky because Waterloo Container is less than 10 minutes away.
Wow.
So, I probably lean on that more than I should. Sometimes if we're ordering glass for a bottling run and I don't order enough, I can always just drive our box truck over to Waterloo Container and get the rest while the bottling run's still going.
Looks like we're going to be low. All right, I'll go grab another.
That is a
Yeah.
nice convenience, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I like to do, but they know me well enough over there now to know that that's sometimes a thing that happens.
Yeah.
And they're a great group.
Oh,
Yeah, we get our
yeah.
glass mostly
Yeah.
from Waterloo as well.
They're great people. So like on that end, they're having some shortages, but they're always great at communicating what they're short
Right.
on. So if there's an opportunity for us to bulk buy something so that we don't run out or maybe change gears, they're giving us lots of room to take care of that. That's one of the big advantages to being in a wine region like this where there's a lot of concentration. Prospero is not much further down the road than Waterloo
If you have
Container.
equipment that breaks or need parts.
If we
or-
fry an impeller in a pump, we can
Right.
have one within a half hour. So we're really, really spoiled here. I mean, we're experiencing the same delays as everybody else, but our vendors are our neighbors in most cases. So we're aware of it before it becomes a problem.
Mhm.
So we've got lots of time to plan.
Great. Okay. I'm going to take a minute and check in with Merike and
How about
see
we
if
try
Merike
some-
has any questions from any of our audiences. How are we doing, Merike? And you got any questions out there that we can answer? Oh, wait a minute. I got to unmute you. There you go. Go ahead.
I was about to ask the same question that you did, wondering how many staff Phil has working with him, but then you asked just as I typed it. And there was one other question Matt was asking about the Erie Canal bike trail and how close we were to that, but I was able to look that up and it's only about 10 miles away. So if they ever do that route, then they can zip right on down to Montezuma and visit you.
Cool. Who's the little kitty there we got on the show?
This is Heiser. He's one of my two adorable kittens, the one that is more amenable to being squeezed.
Well, signal me if or somehow get my attention. I'm watching, so you can, if you have a question that I can jump back over to you, let me know.
I will do my best.
All right, great. So, and I did notice we have a number of people I haven't mentioned yet, but Christine's here and Janice and Lynn, a lot of our regulars, and of course Matt's here, Gary, and looks like Geraldine is with us. Yeah, Geraldine's here. And so thanks everybody for joining us again for another episode. And again, if you have questions, please let us know. We'll do our best to answer them. So, what do you see? You've come a long way in the last 10, 12 years. Where do you see yourself going? And maybe before you start there, what's the future here for Montezuma and the other two brands? In the next 5 or 10 years, any major changes you see coming up that you?
I think that is the same answer as the other question you asked. I think we have volume products that pay the bills and keep the lights on, but we're constantly pushing the envelope on other stuff we're making. And both of these wines that I have for you today are examples of that. I'm trying to become a lower input winemaker and do more of it by feel than by data. And I understand that data is important, but the analogy I've been using to describe this lately is that I'm trying to make wine the same way that Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star. Like I use the instruments to get me to the surface, but when it's time to take the shot, I'm turning them off and just doing it by feel.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Thanks. I'm gonna make it really tired because I keep saying it over and over. I'm enamored with it.
Well, it's the first time I've heard it.
Yeah. It's not gonna be the last time you hear it from me, I'm sure.
And what are we drinking now?
So this is another Riesling, again from the 2021 vintage, but this is a Seuss Reserve. So Süß Reserve is a tradition that they use in Germany where they hold on to some unfermented juice and blend it back in at the end of fermentation, and that's where the residual sugar comes from, but it also tamps down the alcohol. So this one, about 42 grams per liter residual, but only 8.8% alcohol. So it's like really zippy. The nice thing about Süß Reserve, rather than just doing a standard arrested fermentation, is that it gives you a more complex sugar profile. So yeast are going to prioritize glucose over fructose, and fructose has like a heavier, sweeter taste. With juice, it's a little more balanced, right? So we're getting a totally rounded sweetness here that you wouldn't get if you just did an arrested fermentation.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah, it's totally crushable. It's just spot on. It's balance of and fruity and flavorful and delicious and easy to drink.
I love the nose.
Great nose. Yeah.
It's got that classic nose. It's really delicious.
So this one I'm planning to bottle next week.
Excellent. So you said you have 100 wines between your 3 wineries. How many of them are out here in the tasting room right now?
Probably like 30.
30. Okay, well, that's about
30 plus.
somewhere in line with what we're doing, 30 or 35
Yeah.
wineries. Yeah. Okay. So the other half of that question was, that's really where you're going here. What do you see for yourself? You have any ideas about where you'd like to be yourself in 10 years?
I mean, definitely around here.
Sure.
But I would like to have a brand all of my own. Just because I think that there's a lot of things that I want to do creatively that are not the safe place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I like to live. I want to constantly be pushing, and I'm starting to become super enamored with natural wines. I understand that that's a complicated subject, but it's something that it's like, I think when natural wines are bad, boy, are they bad. But when they're good, they're some of the most interesting wines you can find. And I want to know what separates that. Like how is it that some of these go so far south and others are just like mind-bending? And that's what I'm trying to tease out with things like these wild cultures and these lower input wines. I think that's eventually the direction I'd like to move in. I'm really taking a step back from filtration and fining wherever I can. I think that first Riesling that I poured for you, I'm going to try and avoid filtration totally. If I can get away with that. I think a little haze in wine is a lot more acceptable than it used to be.
Yeah, it's great.
The
Same
craft
with
brewers
beer.
have paved
Yep,
that
they've paved the way for us.
Yep.
So I think that's really what's fascinating to me. I like to make all kinds of different styles. We're really into orange wines here, which is skin fermented white grapes and pet nats, especially.
I love pet nats.
So just really like, I think I got to a point, maybe back around 2016, where I realized that the wines that I was making were not as interesting to me as the wines that I really wanted to drink. And the common denominator there was me, right? And part of it is, I think when you're a young winemaker, you get started and the mindset is, okay, don't mess this up. And when you do that, you're white knuckling, and that translates into the wine. When you're trying to fit it to the parameters where it has to be, and you're prioritizing like technically clean wines over everything else. And that's not to say that technically clean wines aren't great. There's amazing wines that are technically clean, but like, I think there's certain things that you do in service of that goal that take away from the finished product sometimes if you're not applying them correctly. And I wasn't applying them correctly. So I made a really concerted effort from that vintage on to have at least 1 or 2 products every vintage where I had to give up control. And Pet Nat was an early place to do that, because it's like, you bottle that while it's going and you cross your fingers
Right.
and hope everything works out.
Mhm.
And that really eased me into a place where it was like, okay, that worked.
Yeah.
Like I can take that chance again. I had a learning curve just to get to a point where I was solidly outside my comfort zone as frequently as possible.
And that path is common for a lot of winemakers who come up in the industry as winemakers, work in the industry for other wineries, learn your trade, and then start to develop your own footprint, your own, maybe, you ever see yourself with a vineyard, or you want to?
Maybe. I don't know anything about growing grapes. I know when to pick them, and I know when to tell the grower that something's going on. But as far as like from planting to like keeping them alive all season, that's not something I have experience with. But it's something that I would like to have experience with.
Yeah.
I think it's especially now that we have like I'm really into hybrid grapes. I haven't poured any of those for you today, but the hybrid grapes that we have now are so low input that it's like that. I mean, that's the whole goal of Cornell's breeding program, right? They're trying to
Make something that fits the environment here, that grows naturally.
that you don't have to
So that
spray.
issue, right?
That's like they're prioritizing grape varieties where they cluster really loosely, so you don't have as much threat of bunch rot.
Yep.
They have natural mildew resistance, things like that. We're really trying to figure out things that you can produce affordably and sustainably.
Fantastic.
And I think that's really the future. And hybrids are having a moment. I mean, the hipsters in Brooklyn can't get enough of them. We're not selling anything down there, but everybody tells me we should be.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the fascinating thing is hybrids have been around for 150 years.
Yeah.
And people have been developing these grapes for a long time, and people have been growing them and making wine from them for a long time. In fact, I saw a recent documentary on the French have essentially banned them.
yeah.
And there are French winemakers that are saying, screw that. We're gonna grow and make. We can do this, and they're fighting the controlees about how do we bring hybrids into the picture
Right.
again.
Or they're moving here.
Or they're moving here. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Well, I think people have an opinion on hybrids that's unfair. And it's because when you have an emerging wine region, hybrids are usually like the first thing to get grown there.
Yeah.
Before the experience grows up around them. So you either have wines that are honestly not that very well made, or they're trying to turn these grape varieties into something they can never be.
They're not.
Right? Like,
They're forcing them to
Right,
be
right.
more like a Merlot or more
Yeah.
like a Pinot or whatever. They're trying to make a vinifera-like wine out of hybrids instead of letting the hybrid be what it wants to be,
exactly.
but fighting it.
Well, and you had that green nature of people's skills in a new emerging market. Not only did they not know which particular varieties grew well where, so there's a lot of learning. Farmers are always pulling up grapes and planting different ones as they learn the soils and the conditions in the area. And then learning to farm isn't something that happens overnight. You have to get good at it. So getting the right fruit to put into the wine takes time. And then, as you said, the winemaking process alone, once you do get the right fruit, learning how to handle that fruit in such a way that expresses it in a way that it's going to be
Right.
meaningful. So takes a long time.
Things
And
get set up. So there's sort of a paradigm. People have come through, they've tried a few hybrids a decade ago, and they're like, nah, that's not for me.
Right,
I don't really care
right.
for it. Same with, fruit wine, no, it's all sweet stuff, I don't care for.
Yeah.
And so when you try to make a distinctive hybrid wine that's expressive of where it grew and what its true character is, people are going like, wow, I've never had anything like that. That's really cool. Or you make a dry, well-balanced, ageable fruit wine. They're like, what is this? This tastes good. How'd that happen? So you were trying to break that as the region and the consumer matures.
Well, and I like to always point this out. We've said it many times before, but it doesn't hurt to say it again. Back in the 60s, if you drank Napa wine, you weren't considered a wine connoisseur.
Yeah.
You drank
came in a
European
jug.
wine. Yeah, Napa wine came in a jug, and it was cheap, and it was not considered fine wine. And think about how that's changed.
Right.
And now Napa is considered one of the top wine regions in the entire world. And it's just been 50 years. But they were making wine for 100 years before that.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time.
It takes a long time to
Yeah.
shift. It takes generations for some to forget and new people to come along and go, well, I've always been drinking this hybrid and I love it.
Yeah.
It's the way it is.
And the wine world is dogmatic. Like it's prone to that in every facet. And it's very easy to spot the ideologues, right? Like it's not, for a lot of those folks, it's not that they genuinely have a disinterest in this stuff. It's that they've been coached to believe that that's what they should feel, right? Like,
Isn't that the truth?
yeah, and like, I don't know. I think that's part of what's exciting to me about right now in the wine industry.
Oh, it's
is
so
that
exciting.
Everything feels really
It's so
open.
exciting. It's all open.
A lot of young folks are coming up without these hard and fast ideas about what wine is or what it should be, and they're open to try something new. And I think the craft beer industry has helped bring that along because they've been more adventuresome. You know, I think the Dogfish Head has really broken all the molds for what's supposed to happen in a beer, and people, and that's become really accepted. And I think the same is happening in the wine world now more than ever before. So you're absolutely right. The sort of the opportunity is there. You need to be willing to explore it and put yourself out there.
Someone comes in, you say, we have this other stuff. It's called a pet nat. It's like, oh, what's that? Oh, I want to try that. Oh, I'm going to take a bottle of that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So there's a bunch of small little wine shops like within a 50-mile radius of here that have really kind of niche selections. And there's one out in Rochester that actually does they do a monthly natural wine club. It's $40 and you just get 2 bottles their pick every month. And it's amazing the places that they come from and the styles and the varieties that they're using. It's incredible to get this exposure.
So this idea that, you know, I often hear this in our winery is somebody will come in and say, I only drink cabs. I only drink California wine. I only drink, it's crazy.
Sorry.
There's, exactly. There's thousands of wines out. There's thousands of vinifera grapes out there. There's hundreds of, maybe close to 1,000 hybrid grapes out there. And then you get into the world of fruit that, you know, that we're in and mead, and the list goes on. There's tens of thousands of choices. Why would you only drink cab?
Yeah.
It's a craziness.
Yeah. And it's, like,
but you get in a routine.
Sure.
You know,
I know I was getting in my rut with
IPA.
IPAs.
Yeah, you were in your IPA routine for a long time. So
it's easy to do. It is easy to do.
Well, I think it's a function of how, that same thing you're talking about is a function of how open the wine world is.
Yeah.
Because there's so much out there to try that when you find something you like, if you're just chasing consistency, it's okay, Napa Cab all day. Napa Cab, I like that.
Yep.
I know I'm not going to invest in a bottle that I don't enjoy.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that's where it takes some massage on the retail end to say
education.
To say, okay, so you like that Napa Cab, but here's this thing from over here that's very similar, and I think you're going to dig it. That's the piece that needs to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got a question from the audience. You have I don't know how many vineyards between your 3 wineries you support. How much interaction do you have with the growers in the vineyards? And
depends on the growers. There are some growers that their families have been working the same farm since the 1800s, and I don't tell them anything.
You're mostly working with you're buying grapes from outside farmers.
All of it.
100%. Okay.
Yep.
So great.
So if you've been doing this, if your family's been doing this, if you've been doing in that vineyard since you were a toddler, there is nothing I can tell you about how to grow those grapes that's going to add anything to that experience. Right?
Are you going to go out into the vineyard around harvest time and pick based on flavor?
Absolutely. And there are other vineyards where they haven't had as much experience, and I'm going to go sample those at least once a week and walk the blocks and be in communication with the growers. It's just depending on like what you're dealing with. There's some growers that want more input. And if I'm not out there for 3 or 4 days, they'll call me and say, hey, I haven't heard from you. Have you seen this block yet? Are you worried about this thing over here? And that's just the nature of building these relationships. One of the things that I try and keep at the front of my mind during the harvest season is that, like, we're partners in this. Like, I can't make a decision that's going to end up taking money out of their pockets, right? They've spent all the time and money to grow those grapes. So if we get into a gun to our head decision-making moment where it's like, if we don't pull this tomorrow, it might not be here next week. But if it hangs on until next week, it's going to be a little riper. We're pulling it tomorrow.
Right.
And I'll figure it out, because I need to make sure that those people
Make their
didn't
money.
waste all their effort.
Right. Because if you make a mistake on that harvest point
Yeah.
and it rains or we get a frost or anything happens, they could lose a whole crop.
Exactly. Well, or furthermore, they could lose vines, right?
Right.
Like, that's the thing that's really important about that. And I think that like, once we can get into a groove with growers where they know that that's how I operate, then when I see a hill that's worth dying on, they're willing to die on that hill with me.
For that really special crop.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. So we've talked about 2 other wineries. Where are the other 2 wineries? And tell us a little bit about the differences between Montezuma and the other 2 wineries that you manage,
So
that you make wine for.
So Montezuma is at the north end of Cayuga Lake.
Yep.
Ridge and Fossenvue are both on the east side of Seneca Lake.
Okay.
Ridge we opened in 2013. And the idea there was that everybody knew that we could make fruit and honey wines and sweeter native based stuff. Now it's time to show them we can do drier grape based things.
More classic.
Classic, varietal focused, a lot of vinifera. And
You getting the vinifera from the lakes region here, or are you getting it from outside the area?
there's so much vinifera.
Okay, good.
It's outrageous how much of it's here. There are stretches like there's, so the microclimate just on like Seneca Lake.
Yep.
If you drive from Idle Ridge 10 miles south, you can grow things that you can't grow at Idle Ridge because of the depth of the lake and the proximity to the other Finger Lakes. You get different lake effects there. So there's farms on Seneca Lake that are growing Sangiovese. They're growing Albarino.
Wow.
They're growing Petit Verdot.
This is relatively new to this area, is it not? I mean, or have they been doing vinifera here for 50 years?
Oh, they've been doing vinifera here since Dr. Frank. That was a major turning point here, right? Like, so if you're familiar with the history of this region, it was built on Labrusca and hybrid varieties. And then Charles Fournier, who was down at Great Western, which became Taylor, brought over a guy from a Ukrainian immigrant named Konstantin Frank, who was a viticulturist. And he was the guy who kind of cracked the code on growing vinifera here. And his family still operates a winery, a fairly large scale winery on Cayuga Lake that has distribution internationally.
Wow.
And they are 100% vinifera. And that's really changed what we do here.
Sure.
And there's been an influx of people from long-standing old world winemaking families who have come and added their own spin. Herman J. Weimer is one on Seneca Lake. And I know you guys have met Johannes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Kemeter is another one.
Great wines.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The dumplings, though? Do you know about that?
No.
His wife makes dumplings there.
Oh,
I gotta go back.
Gotta go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got sidetracked. So that's Idle Ridge,
Yeah.
and mostly classic, many vinifera wines. And then the other one is
So the other one is called Fossenvue, and it was Idle Ridge's next door neighbor was a winery called King's Garden, where the owners decided they wanted to get out of the business entirely, move south. So when it came up for sale, the family that owns the wineries bought them out. And when we did that, we thought about continuing that brand, but it didn't really fit with what we were trying to do. So our idea for Fossenvue is that it's going to showcase, our idea at the time was that it's going to showcase a little bit of everything, right? So we're going to do fruit and honey wines there, but they're going to be smaller batch, a little bit more artistic. We're also going to do grape wines there, smaller batch, artistic. Since we took that over in 2018, we've decided to kind of refocus that and make it just fruit and honey wines, because we moved that, we converted that tasting room. It wasn't a great place to taste wine, so we converted it to an Airbnb of all things. And moved all those wines under Idle Ridge's roof. Okay. So it didn't make sense to have
the same
7 different Rieslings under 2 labels there. So we're kind of shaping that as we go. We've been working on some pet nat style meads that I think are going to really be pleasing to the craft beer crowd. And just some kind of more off the beaten path stuff that's not redundant with what we have for Idle Ridge. So a little bit of everything, really.
So it sounds like, I mean, I don't know how you get through the day, but it sounds really exciting that you get to have your hands in so many different pots. Between these 3 wineries, you're working with meads, you're working with classic vinifera, you're on cutting edge fruit wine, cutting edge hybrid stuff. It seems fascinating that you get to, how do you manage all of that? It just seems, I mean, it sounds exciting, but on the other hand, it sounds overwhelming. How do you get that done in a day?
I think this is where I plug Vintrace.
Yep.
Maybe give me a discount. But I think software helps a lot, because it helps us to direct the traffic, right? We've got a lot of wines in a lot of different tanks. So to have it all managed in one spot where we can do everything we need to do from it and keep our reports up to date.
So you can make decisions right here for the other 2 wineries and maybe have winemaker assistants or cellar assistants.
Everything in production happens under this roof. The other ones are just tasting rooms. And we
I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
I thought
That makes it a little easier.
Production over there.
Nope.
No, all production is here.
Yep.
Just the different labels.
Yep. And we actually have 2 satellite stores for the Montezuma brand too. So we have one in Old Forge in the Adirondacks, and we just opened one in Cooperstown last summer.
So when you say 30,000 cases, that's here and those 2 wineries, that's supplying all 3 of the wineries. Okay. That puts it in a little better focus, because I was imagining, 30,000 here, 20,000 there, 10,000 there.
No, it's broad spectrum.
Yeah. Wow. So that's a lot of stuff under one roof.
It is a lot.
It's a big roof.
It is big.
Quite a few roofs.
Yeah, quite a few roofs.
I don't get much time to get in trouble.
Yeah. Do you get much time with your family? You might get in trouble with your wife, I imagine, once in a while.
No, I think she likes that I'm occupied a lot of the time. Gives her space.
That's great. You guys just got a house.
We did just get a house. We actually moved last weekend in the snow.
That's exciting. So and I think you said you had acreage.
Yeah.
8 acres. I've got ideas.
I bet you do.
When we came to visit you a few summers ago, we stayed in a tiny house. And
yes, that's right on the road just down from yours. You came over to dinner at Chuck's house.
Right. Yeah.
And then you drop down onto 127 and you go up the next road.
Oh, yeah, New Boston Road. Yeah.
New Boston Road.
Yeah.
And you were in a tiny house up there.
Yeah, right on the hill there.
Yeah.
And ever since, my fiance Jenny can't get tiny houses out of her brain. Like that's the plan, is that we want to have like a tiny house there that we can run as an Airbnb and have family come visit.
Yeah.
That's
and things like that. Maybe if there's a vineyard in between, then.
Right.
So I apologize. I keep saying your wife. It's your fiance.
That's okay.
Do you have plans anytime soon? You're going to change
No, we wanted to buy the house first.
Okay. Well, you got that done.
That felt like the right move. Let's make sure we have a place to live, and then we can start figuring out the next big thing we need to spend money on.
The tiny house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, I'm personally not super into weddings. Like I'm very, you can't tell it right now.
Careful, this is being recorded, so.
Oh, she knows all this. She knows all this. I'm super introverted, so like the idea of having all of my friends and family in one place trying to small talk with me all day, like makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. Don't do that.
You never know that though. Every time we're together, you're always so personable and always easy to spend time with.
Yeah, well, I get excited talking to you guys because we speak the same language, right?
Yeah, we are talking about wine mostly.
That's
this
true.
isn't small talk.
Yeah, like,
This is geeking out
Yeah.
on wine. We're just talking about the new things, what's happening, the
like you
details of stuff.
can't take me into a crowd of people that I don't know because like everybody will be talking about the weather and it's like, so what do you think happens when we die, right? Like let's talk about something real.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So we're running out of time, so I want to get a couple more questions that I think are important. First of all, do you know if any of your wines from any of the wineries are available in New Hampshire right now?
Not at a store, but we just signed up with Vino Shipper, and I think that opens up New Hampshire for direct-to-consumer shipping.
Excellent.
Yes, it
We
does.
sent you some wines a few summers ago during COVID, and
One second, got a question.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was actually an answer to sort of elaborate. I was searching myself because I was wondering if you could find Montezuma wines. There aren't any in the New Hampshire liquor stores, but there are a lot of other New York wines. Some of that you mentioned, you can get Dr. Constantine Frank, Heron Hill, Herman J. Weimer, and a few other of those lovely Fingerlakes wines at the New Hampshire liquor stores. But Montezuma definitely for shipping, and I'm sure Phil knows more details about which wines are available to ship, but you can definitely ship them even if you can't get them at New Hampshire stores.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're going to be, when are they available on Vino Shipper?
right now,
Right now on the
Yeah.
website, Montezuma's website? Great. So if anybody listening wants to order wines, they can, probably not all of them. You probably have,
I think almost everything.
Almost everything?
Because the way that it works is we ship it out of here,
yeah.
Right.
Right.
Oh, okay.
You package
And
it,
then-
you ship
Yeah.
it.
and then Vino
UPS picks it
Shipper
up.
like has all the
They
licensing
do all the
state to
licensing.
state. We sent you guys some wines a few summers back
During the pandemic.
During the pandemic,
Right.
we were doing these virtual tastings,
Yeah.
and we had one that was all fruit and honey wines. So I wanted you guys to be in
Yeah, that
on
was great. That was a great event.
And then a month later, we got a really cool nasty gram from the New Hampshire government that said we
Yeah, they're-
committed felonies sending them to you.
Yeah.
So-
yeah.
You got to be careful.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had a staff who actually joined a wine club, and they always tell you at wine clubs, ship to your office if you're not going to be home a lot,
So you
because
can
you
sign
can
for it.
sign for it. And so the person was from out west. They came here to work in New Hampshire with us, and they ordered the wine club, and they said, "Hey, I'll ship it to my office," which was Hermit Winery. And about a week later, I get a call from the liquor commission saying, "I noticed you had wine shipped to your winery.
Yeah.
You know that's illegal, right?" Well, I didn't even know we did it. Never mind that it's illegal.
Our reaction was like, "Aren't you guys the live free or die state?"
Did you
It
say
is-
that
it
to
is,
him?
it is.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
is
like-
pretty wild. So like, you've got a distillery here,
Mhm.
and if you had a tasting room or a place where you could have food, you could presumably make mixed drinks or whatever and sell those. Well, in New Hampshire, if you have a distillery and you have a place to prepare your mixed drinks and stuff, you have to take your distilled products, bottle them, drive them down to the state liquor store, log them in, they purchase them for you, they hold on and get them into the system for 4 days. You go back, buy them from them, bring them back to your place, and then make your mixed drinks.
Cool.
That is the system that we live with.
Yeah.
So we could go down this road with all kinds of fun stories. But
Yeah.
one other thing for everybody at home again, I'm confident that many of our friends out there in the world will one day, if they haven't already, want to come to this area. We've already made it clear there's a few hundred wineries here, and we've already made it clear that you should visit them all. But you're not going to in any one visit. So as a highlight, if somebody was coming to this region, after they leave Montezuma, where should they go? And maybe some of your other offerings, but some of your fellow winemakers out there, there's some recommendations for something different, maybe something new, something.
Yeah, so we've got first place that I recommend to everybody is Scout Vineyards. They just opened last summer, and it's a young couple. They actually live at the winery, and they both still have day jobs. So Daniel works for a commercial grain farm, like an heirloom grain farm, and Olivia is a science teacher, and they make Chardonnay that makes me so jealous. It's just out of control good. And really everything they make is fantastic. You go down the road from them. Missick Cellars used to be called Villa Bellangelo, but Chris Missick makes me feel lazy because
That's hard to believe.
That's not
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, before he was a winemaker, he was a practicing lawyer and was arguing cases before the Supreme Court. And now he's like running a winery with multiple tasting rooms. He does a regular podcast. He ran for New York State Assembly last year, and he's raising a young family. So every time I get to talk to Chris, I feel like I have way too much time that I'm not using appropriately. Those would be good visits. Yeah, there's so many around here. There's a rebranded winery down the road from us called 680 Cellars. It used to be called Toro Run. And Ian Barry there, the winemaker, he's been kind of a staple of this industry for the last 15 years or so. He's really made a name for himself. He runs his own private brand, does a lot of consulting. But the family that owns 680, when they bought it, just said, all right, Ian, do what you want to do. So it's all like alternative containers. So he's got flavor, he's got sandstone, he's got concrete, terracotta.
Wow.
All super low input, just really, really interesting natural adjacent wines. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Like there's just so much new and exciting here.
So really the point is just come to this area
Absolutely.
and explore.
Yeah.
Explore.
And if you don't hit them all in one go, come back.
Yeah.
Like,
Excellent. Yeah. Well, you can't hit them all in one go. And I'm really good at that, and I still couldn't do it.
Yeah.
this,
So we're at an hour. Is there one last thing that you are excited about or you care about or that you haven't talked about yet that you think you'd like to share before we sign off for the day?
okay, yeah. So I sent some wines back when Merike visited that are part of a new series that we just launched here last year called our Velour series.
Velour.
Velour is the French word for thief.
Yeah.
And thief for a lot of different reasons. Thief because it's a tool we use in the cellar, and thief because these are the wines that are like my love letters to the old world wines that got me into this, right? And stealing their ideas, making them my own. This Seuss Reserve is going to be a Velour wine.
Oh,
and to kind of tie everything up back to the beginning, the idea behind those wines is that like what's really interesting to me about wine these days is less about the data and more about the squishy stuff that lives in between it, the experience of it. So we've been purposefully vague on our labels. We don't tell you the classic smells like this, tastes like this, paired with this. We're really trying to lean into the experience. So we're taking examples of books, movies, and songs that I think speak to the spirit of what's in the bottle, and those are your pairings.
Great.
So it's just a totally new look and feel for us, and it's been one of my babies. So I'm very excited about those wines, and I'm happy to push them and talk about.
So
them.
what's your pairing with this one?
So this one. The spirit of this wine being that that everything you need is right inside all the time, right? Seuss Reserve, we're holding on to that juice and putting it back. The book is Siddhartha.
Yep.
Right?
Yes. Urban Hess.
The movie is a cult classic, The Fifth Element. And the song is by an artist, M83. He's this weird like French electronic artist. And the song's called Steve McQueen, but you can't hear it through his accent, but the whole like hook is there's a magic inside waiting to come out. But yeah, that's the whole theme of.
That's fantastic.
That is a great way to end the show. That is fantastic. I love the idea, and And I can't imagine how much fun you're having, researching from wine to wine, the right music, the right book, the right song, whatever, or movie. So really fun. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. That's going to
It's been a great time.
Yeah. So good. So thank you so much for, on such short notice, letting us
Anytime,
bombard
guys.
in here
You guys
once again. And of course, anytime you're coming our way, you can bombard into our world.
Absolutely.
Just the same. We'd love to have you
Okay.
always.
Perfect.
So thank you. And we're hoping to have a really exciting show at EWE. And folks, we're going to be going live a couple times, probably over the next 3 or 4 days. Ken's going to be presenting pretty much all day tomorrow. Maybe I'll go live with some of Ken's presentation, and you can see some of that. But look forward to that. And otherwise, we'll see you, if not this week, we'll see you next Monday at 5:30. I don't know what we're doing yet. Imagine that.
Unusual. Yeah.
How strange that we don't know.
We do have some exciting things coming up, though. We've had some ideas that we're working out. We have some new guests that we're going to be bringing on board. So I'm going to get ahead of the schedule again, so we can get some of these broadcasts put out, a month or two in advance soon. But
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
No, he'll do that for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right,
He's on it.
And because we had to get in here in a hurry, we don't have our normal system set up, so we're not going to have the fancy music saying goodbye. So I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody, and we're going to end the broadcast. So again, thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you all later this week or the end of or next Monday. Take care. Have a great night.
Bye.